Have you ever mistaken humility for weakness? Do you think being humble means letting others walk over you? Here's the truth. Humility is not surrender, it's control. It's the quiet strength that earns respect without demanding it. Before we begin, if you're someone striving to grow, to think deeper, live wiser, and become your best self, make sure to subscribe and join our community of self-improvement and Stoic thinkers. Today, we're uncovering how humility becomes the foundation of true respect and why those who serve others often rise the highest. 1. The misunderstood strength. In our world, loudness often gets mistaken for confidence. The person who speaks the most, the one who dominates a room or fills every silence, is too often assumed to be strong. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that noise is not proof of certainty, and that composure, that quiet, immovable calm, is the true measure of inner power. To the Stoic, restraint is not weakness. It is the discipline of one who no longer needs the approval of others. The loud man seeks to convince others, the quiet man has already convinced himself. True strength does not parade itself. It doesn't seek attention or validation because it is self-sustained. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy," and in those words lies the essence of Stoic strength, control over the self. When a person is provoked yet remains steady, they show mastery. When insulted yet composed, they show wisdom. Power is not in domination, but in discipline, not in noise, but in the silence that follows self-control. The misunderstood strength, then, is humility, the power to know your worth without declaring it to the world. Humility isn't about thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking of yourself less. It's the art of stepping back from ego and seeing life as something bigger than your own reflection. The humble person doesn't deny their abilities. They simply don't measure their worth by comparison. They understand that their talents are tools for service, not trophies for admiration. In this way, humility and strength intertwine. One tempers the other, creating balance where pride would create instability. It takes immense confidence to be humble, to admit that you don't have all the answers, to listen rather than speak, to step aside and let others shine. These are not acts of weakness, but of maturity. The Stoic knows that the ego's voice is loud but fragile. The self-assured are calm because they have nothing to prove. They do not need to advertise their value. Their actions speak clearly enough. As Epictetus said, "Be silent for the most part, or if you speak, say only what is necessary and in few words." In this silence, dignity grows. The humble person doesn't need validation. Their peace comes from within. They are not swayed by praise nor broken by criticism. Their sense of worth is anchored in their principles, not in the ever-changing tides of opinion. And this is why humility is such misunderstood strength. It looks soft, but it's unbreakable. It bends, but never breaks, yields, but never surrenders. In a world obsessed with appearances, humility remains the quiet form of greatness, steady, sincere, and timeless. 2. The core principle, respect, comes from serving. Respect doesn't grow from boasting or showing off achievements. It grows from serving others, from listening before speaking, from lifting others rather than stepping over them. The Stoics believed that to lead was to serve, for leadership without service is nothing more than vanity in disguise. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." This truth cuts to the heart of respect. It is not demanded. It is earned through how you treat others. Boasting creates distance. Service builds connection. When a person serves with sincerity, they demonstrate understanding, that life is not a competition but a shared experience. To serve is to recognize that your strength exists for the benefit of others. The Stoic leader doesn't elevate himself. He elevates those around him. He listens, he learns, and he acts not for applause, but for alignment with virtue. In the eyes of the Stoics, this is true nobility, not in birth, not in wealth, but in character. Respect that comes from service is lasting because it is rooted in authenticity. When your actions arise from humility and compassion, others see integrity. They trust you not because you claim greatness, but because you live it quietly. A person who serves proves their worth through usefulness, not through words. And in doing so, they mirror the Stoic ideal, a life guided by purpose, free from the need for recognition. When you lead through service, when your goal is to uplift, not outshine, people naturally respect you. The Stoics taught that we are all parts of a greater whole, bound by reason and empathy. The moment we recognize that our power is most meaningful when shared, we transcend the limits of ego. The leader who serves doesn't lose authority, they gain moral weight. They command not through fear, but through the quiet loyalty that only sincerity can create. Even in Stoicism, service is power. It's the act of selflessness that transforms leadership into legacy. Think of Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who ruled the world yet viewed himself as a servant of the common good. His meditations were not proclamations of grandeur, but reminders to stay humble amidst glory. True greatness, he understood, lies in living rightly, in serving faithfully, not in being seen as mighty. Respect built on service endures long after titles fade, for in serving others, we serve virtue itself, and virtue never dies. 3. The practice of humility. So how can you live humility every day? Start small. The Stoics never spoke of perfection, they spoke of progress. Each act of humility, no matter how quiet, shapes the soul. Admit when you're wrong. It takes more courage than pretending to be perfect. Pride seeks to preserve image, humility seeks truth, and truth, as the Stoics knew, is the foundation of peace. To acknowledge your errors is not to fall, but to rise with clearer vision. Give credit where it's due. It costs nothing but earns everything. In giving credit, you disarm envy and strengthen unity. You remind others that success is rarely solitary, that every step forward is built on collective effort. The Stoic understands that life is a partnership between individuals, between self and nature, between thought and action. To share recognition is to live in harmony with that truth. And stay grounded. No matter how far you go, never forget where you began. Achievements can inflate the ego if gratitude is lost. Humility is the anchor that prevents pride from drifting into arrogance. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Soon you will have forgotten all things, and all things will have forgotten you." Not as a grim warning, but as a humbling truth that life is brief and glory fades. What remains is character, how you treated others and how faithfully you lived your principles. Humility keeps you teachable, and those who stay teachable never stop growing. The Stoic student never graduates from learning. They see wisdom as an endless path. When you approach each day with the question, "What can I learn?" you remain open, adaptable, and resilient. Pride builds walls. Humility builds doors. It allows wisdom to enter and pride to exit. To live humility is to practice awareness of your place in the world, of your limitations, and of your blessings. It's the quiet discipline of gratitude and the calm acceptance of imperfection. Humility doesn't demand that you hide your light, it simply asks that you shine it without blinding others. It's knowing you have power, but choosing to use it gently. And in the end, that's what Stoicism teaches best, that the strongest souls are those who rule themselves first, and in mastering the self, they learn the truest form of greatness, humility. 4. A real example of quiet strength. Think about the great leaders who stayed humble, those who listened more than they spoke, who treated everyone with equal respect. History remembers them not for their noise, but for their composure. They were the ones who could walk into a room and calm it, not by demanding attention, but by deserving it. Their power was steady, rooted, and unshakable, not because they never faltered, but because they never pretended to be more than human. A humble leader does not see others as lesser beings. He sees himself as part of something greater. He doesn't rise by climbing over others, but by lifting them. True authority is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply is. Consider Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who could have lived in luxury and ruled through fear. Instead, he wrote in his private journals reminders to himself about humility, kindness, and restraint. He spoke to his own ego like a stern but loving mentor. "Do not be Caesarified," he warned himself. "Do not be stained with purple." He wanted to remain a man among men, not a god among mortals. Despite commanding the greatest empire of his time, Marcus chose simplicity over vanity. He walked among soldiers, ate plain food, and welcomed criticism. His strength lay not in conquest, but in character. His example reminds us that quiet strength is the kind that endures. It does not burn out in pride, it burns steadily in purpose. Nelson Mandela offers another timeless example. After spending 27 years in prison, he emerged not with bitterness, but with a heart wide enough to forgive those who wronged him. He did not raise his voice to condemn, he raised it to unite. His humility became his greatest form of leadership. When he became president, he treated his former captors with dignity, even inviting one of his prison guards to his inauguration. That gesture wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Mandela knew that lasting influence comes not from retaliation, but from reconciliation. His quiet strength healed a nation that had been broken by arrogance and division. The world still reveres him not because he sought admiration, but because he sought peace. In contrast, those who crave power for its own sake often crumble under its weight. They shout to be heard, they demand respect, but the louder they become, the smaller they seem. The humble, however, remain steady. They don't need to prove themselves, they need only to be themselves. Their actions speak where their words do not. This is the paradox of humility. By lowering oneself, one becomes greater. By staying calm in moments of pressure, one commands more respect than those who try to dominate through force. Real strength isn't loud, and real leadership isn't self-serving. The humble leader builds trust, the loud one builds fear, and fear fades quickly, but trust lasts. Quiet strength, then, is not passive. It is deeply active, but inwardly directed. It is the discipline of the soul, the restraint of the ego, the practice of patience when provoked. It listens, reflects, and then acts, not for applause, but for what is right. A humble person's presence carries a certain gravity. People are drawn to it, though they may not know why. It's because humility feels safe. It feels genuine. It reminds us of what is rare in the modern world: authenticity. When you meet someone who is both powerful and kind, confident yet gentle, you're witnessing a living example of quiet strength. And that is what leaves a lasting mark. Not the noise of ambition, but the peace of integrity. 5. The inner reward. When you practice humility, something shifts inside you. The world feels less like a competition and more like a classroom. You stop looking sideways, comparing, measuring, envying, and start looking inward. Each day becomes less about proving and more about improving. You no longer chase validation from others. Instead, you find satisfaction in your own growth. This is the subtle transformation humility brings. It replaces insecurity with curiosity, pride with peace. When you let go of the need to win every argument, you begin to win something far more valuable: your own tranquility. Humility doesn't make you smaller, It frees you from the constant burden of self-importance. The humble person is not self-deprecating. They are self-aware. They know their strengths without boasting and their weaknesses without shame. This balance allows them to live with calm confidence, not fragile pride. The ego wants recognition. The soul wants understanding. The ego wants to be admired. The soul wants to be at ease. When humility takes root, the noise of ego quiets down, and you begin to hear something deeper: your conscience, your sense of purpose, your inner stillness. You stop needing to be right all the time and start wanting to be better all the time. Think of it this way: pride seeks an audience, but humility seeks alignment. The proud person says, "Look at me." The humble person says, "Let me learn." And in that shift, life opens up. Mistakes become lessons instead of insults. Criticism becomes fuel instead of fire. You begin to appreciate others not as threats to your value, but as teachers on your path. This is how humility transforms relationships. It softens the edges between people. It invites cooperation instead of conflict, understanding instead of judgment. When you stop needing to prove your worth, you create space for genuine connection. And then, without even trying, respect finds you, naturally, silently, powerfully. Because people sense when someone is at peace with themselves. They can feel when confidence comes from calm, not conceit. The humble person doesn't have to say they're strong. Their strength shows in how they carry themselves, how they handle loss, how they respond to pressure. They don't need praise to feel validated. Their validation comes from the integrity of their own actions. This is the inner reward, the quiet assurance that you are living rightly, without pretense, without the exhausting need for approval. Humility is the soil in which wisdom grows. It keeps you teachable, adaptable, open. It allows you to evolve without shame and to succeed without arrogance. Every Stoic understood this truth, that mastery of the self is the greatest victory. Seneca wrote that no man can learn what he thinks he already knows. The humble person remains forever a student, even when they lead others. They know that life is too vast for any one person to conquer, but it can be deeply understood by the one who listens. The true reward of humility is not fame, not comfort, not admiration. It is freedom. Freedom from comparison, from vanity, from the endless chase of ego. And in that freedom, you finally find peace. The kind of peace that no one can give you and no one can take away. Here's your challenge for today. In just one conversation, choose humility. Listen more. Admit something you could have done better, or simply say thank you with sincerity. Remember, the humble don't chase respect. They earn it by being real. If this message inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and keep walking the path of wisdom and self-improvement. Because true strength isn't in pride, it's in humility.